Hello and welcome to episode 131 of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. I'm Captain Bosch von Ronsenberg of Dumbass.
Damn it!
How long were you sitting on that one?
I was sitting on it. I was thinking about it today. No, I'm actually not Captain Bosch. You should listen to Andor's Lies. I'm your host, Robert Steinman, Pale Robbie on the boards. Joining me today is Derek. I'll look at Gladio all day, Heemsbergen.
I will, yes, and Bosch as well, because he's got like the kind of ab window. It's like a weird, like a diamond ab window, which is very unusual in terms of costume design. But today my nickname is Derek. Loving you is evil EC with textures like these. Heemsbergen.
Oh, God.
His pun game.
Sorry that you're
strong.
jealous of my profound wit.
You can't rename yourself after I give you a name, though.
Your puntelligence.
I like that.
Oh boy, that's Caitlin. Persona 5 isn't even the best Persona Argyros.
Really? That's what you took away
That
from
was the best thing you said in the pre-show. That was hilarious.
It's true. But, I mean, and I love
right
Persona 5, but it's true. Sorry, not sorry. But yes, hi, Link Zero on the boards, and well, I mean, everyone knows that I'm a huge Final Fantasy 12 super fan, so that's why I'm here.
And then finally, we have Steph Canada Dry Sabidlo. Sabidlo, I paused. I'm that tired right now, and I was just Hi, Steph.
Hi, I'm playing Dragon Quest VIII while we speak.
Yes!
Good idea.
I'm so proud of you.
I knew you would be.
How good is it? How much are you loving it?
It's quite delightful, I will say that.
So who was instrumental in getting her to play this? Wasn't it Steven or Rob?
Actually, no, it was honestly me looking up a list of the 3DS features, and I came around to it. So they got rid of the random medals, and that just kind of appeals to me.
True.
Yeah, that 3DS
the faster
remake,
combat.
We've talked at length about that 3DS remake. It is really, really good. And Solosi also pushed a lot of pressure on Steph to play Dragon Quest, and 8 is phenomenal. And I have some of my men right now storming Derek's house to grab him and bring him to Philadelphia so he can translate all of Dragon Quest 11 for me.
It's going to take a while, buddy. Like
Okay.
a long while. I can do it, but it's going to take some time.
That's okay. We'll just chain you up in my basement. Okay, we'll feed you. Don't worry. Everything's gonna. You like kale?
Not
Who doesn't?
I got sick off of it once. Ever since then, kale is just like popular spinach. I read that on the internet, but it's true.
Okay, so we got to talk about Final Fantasy 12, right? We do.
Yes.
No, this is not an episode of Retro Encounter, everybody. This is the Final Fantasy 12 HD remake. The Zodiac Age is out. We've been waiting a long time for this, over a year. It was announced just before E3 last year.
Happy 11th birthday.
Oh my God. No, don't do that to me.
I was working at GameStop when this came out, and I went to the midnight release of it because wasn't it on Halloween, or it was close to it?
It was
in
really
2006.
close.
And I was working at GameStop, and I went to our pathetic little midnight launch. We had like 9 people there. I cosplayed as Zell from Final Fantasy VIII.
I would have beaten you with a tire iron within an inch of your life.
I would have beaten you with my fists. And then my friend cosplayed as Squall, and another friend cosplayed as Yuffie, and we were little wee babes. We were so goddamn excited about that game. And,
That's so cute.
And then you got home and you played it.
And it was good.
I'll say I've never disliked FF12. In the early days, like my initial reaction, especially right after I finished the game, was, wow, that story was underwhelming, because I think I sort of created this false alternative narrative in my head of like what I thought was going to happen in the story, which is never a really good idea because it sets you up for disappointment. And
like before or after, like while you're going through the game, you got disappointed, or beforehand?
When I finished it and I sat and I thought about it for a while, I was disappointed because I felt like there was a lot of wasted potential. And
they kind of cheap you out on the ending.
I still kind of feel that way. Yeah, I still think that there's some issues with Final Fantasy 12 not really like coming to the full breadth of what it could have amounted to with how big and rich the world is, and I felt like the cast was kind of weak. But the more I think about it, Final Fantasy 12 is a game that I've really come around on. So like at first I was a little lukewarm on it after I finished it, and I've come around, and now it's like probably my second favorite after FF6. I just think there's so much to love in FF12, and it's a really deeply textured and nuanced game. And playing it in HD with all of these modern advancements like fast forwarding and everything really makes me appreciate, like, this game was ahead of its time when it came out.
Oh,
Yes.
the visual design, man. Like, I've just enjoyed walking around or fast forwarding around Rabanastre,
Yeah, it's
and just looking at how epic and beautiful all the buildings are in there. And it's just a really cool civilization that they've built in that game.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of game that you kind of have to take a different approach to playing it than you would any other Final Fantasy. Because, I mean, Final Fantasy, traditionally, what it wants to do was always reinvent the wheel every time it comes out. We have these thematically similar things happening usually from game to game, and they tend to have the turn-based battle system and what have you. But as we've gone into the future, they want to shake something up every time they do it. And so when Final Fantasy 12 came out, a lot of people, I say we, but I think most people weren't ready for the complete shift to like semi real time. And it threw a lot of people off because they were like, this doesn't feel like Final Fantasy anymore. Now, fast forward 11 years later, we're looking at this like, oh my God, it was way ahead of its time, and it feels so organic and well conceived now. And I think a lot of those initial sort of outcry about like, oh my God, it plays itself. I want to be controlling the game. You are controlling the game, but you are on a macro level. And I find that a lot of the joy comes in really fine-tuning your setup, your gambits, your licenses, and everything to create this like unstoppable roving death squad.
Yeah.
Okay, so one immediate issue I just had right off the bat with gambits, where I was like, okay, I'm going to embrace this and love it. If I set it up to steal first, because hey, it's a good idea, and they have nothing to steal, they seem to keep stealing.
Well, that's when you set up other
HP 100%.
I don't know. No, it's foe, I think.
A good steal gambit is set it to a foe HP 100% steal, so that they'll steal it, and then your other party members, if you set them to like attack party members' target, they'll hit it, and then you don't have to worry about yourself continually stealing over and over.
I want to pause right there because what you guys just did, I think, is a real testament to how brilliant the Gambit system is. I mean, I know I'm probably going to end up being the most negative on Final Fantasy XII, mostly from story aspects, and the original version of the game, which I think was, a brilliant attempt, but didn't, we'll get there. But one of the things that I really appreciate about Final Fantasy 12 is there is always a gambit. There's always a set of if-then statements to overcome something. So what you just saw was Steph saying, I want to do this, and Derek saying, you should do it like this, which is brilliant. And any other game that I have played since Final Fantasy 12, and we mentioned that that's 11 years that Final Fantasy 12 has been out. Any other RPG that I've played that has an AI system for your characters doesn't even come close to this game in terms of the complexity of the if-then statements, the fact that it just flat out works, like the system actually works, and you can make it just, hey, have your guys attack with melee hits whoever the party leader's target is. I mean, that's how I got through the game the first time through, because I made everybody a bunch of hammer-wielding paladins that could heal each other, so I didn't have any trouble with the game. And that's where I think, as we talk more about the Zodiac job system, that really fixes a lot of problems. But like the other day, I was trying to play Pillars of Eternity, and I just got fed up because I only had like 4 AI options to choose from, and none of them worked. And I started thinking for a second, I'm like, I've never played a game where the AI worked 100% of the time. Final Fantasy XII gives you that flexibility, and nobody's even touched it since.
I would agree. I think it's also kind of like a baby's first programming language thing, and that it does require a certain level
your if-then statements,
sort of mental finesse, but it's also really accessible and approachable because it does start out very simple with, okay, just attack the enemy that's attacking you. And then as you get more abilities, then you think, okay, now that I have a fire spell, maybe I can set it to attack an enemy that's weak to fire. And a key failing in the original Final Fantasy XII is that you didn't get a lot of those conditionals until very late in the game. Mm-hmm. The gambits that would let you do stuff like attack enemies weak to fire, they didn't give it to you right away. So it was like playing with a tool set that had half the tools missing. Mm-hmm. So Final Fantasy XII HD rectifies that by very early on in the game, giving you access to every gambit, flat out.
I thought so. I didn't think it was that crazy in the original game. I was like, holy crap, there's so much available.
Yeah, so
it's a little overwhelming at first because you could go bankrupt trying to buy them all. Some of them are quite expensive.
Yeah, especially the ones that involve enemies, like target an enemy if it has health of over 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever. And the nice thing is you don't need those ones early in the game, so you can hold off on them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's really cool because not only am I getting a completely different experience the second time around by having the job system in place, which we'll get to, I can actually have a Black Mage character who is built towards exploiting enemy weaknesses. I can focus on unlocking a lot of Gambit slots first, and then I can program them to attack the weaknesses with spells. And it's like, this is what they intended for me to do originally, but I couldn't because of the way the Gambits were allocated. So that right away is a huge plus.
But going back to what we were talking about earlier about the game being ahead of its time and all, I definitely agree. And I think personally, in my opinion, that extends to the game's plot too. I've seen so many people who are talking about Zodiac Age saying that coming back to it, playing it again, now that I'm older, I'm liking the plot a lot more. I mean, it still has its problems, but I'm enjoying it and I'm finding myself more engrossed by it. And I feel like coming off of games like the previous single-player Final Fantasies games, Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, 9, 10, all of these games where the plot is it's all save the world, save the planet. You have a character-focused narrative. You typically have a romance subplot in the game. Coming from that to 12, which is a lot more political-minded in its plot, it's much more about world building and the story of these well, mainly 2 warring nations, but 3 if you include Rosaria. Mm-hmm. And that sort of micro level conflict, it's not all of Ivalice, it's just a few countries. That was a really big shift, I think, in narrative style. And I feel like people weren't quite as ready for that coming off of previous Final Fantasies, and now coming back to it later, being, maybe being a little older, having played other games, having more experience with storytelling, it's a little bit more appealing. It's certainly, even to me, I was in college when I first played it. I was actually in Japan when it released in Japan, so I played the Japanese version first and then played the Western release. Even coming off of that to how I've been playing it right now, I'm noticing things that didn't occur to me before, and I'm finding, despite the sort of brevity of the story at times, the cutscenes kind of feel like they move maybe a little bit too quickly sometimes. There's a lot of depth to and subtlety to things that are going on that aren't maybe immediately apparent.
One thing I usually blame for that is the shift to like very dramatic and, voice heavy cutscenes. They don't want to fit that much into a cutscene, so they tend to be fast with it. Whereas you get like dialogue based games where it's just dialogue and they can just throw in as much text as they want because it's nothing to do that. Mm-hmm. It's unvoiced, so it's just like, yeah, here's more exposition. So like Trails games have been doing beautifully because they don't have to really care about that.
Yeah, and I find in Final Fantasy 12, so if we're looking at, say, Final Fantasy 10 versus 12, 10 was the first Final Fantasy game that was voiced. Mm-hmm. And I very much enjoy the story of 10, and I like 10 overall. But in a lot of the cutscenes in 10, you can kind of get this sense of like, it's one line being read at a time. Where like somebody says something and then there's a break and then next line and then next line. Whereas in FF12, you get overlapping dialogue sometimes and it kind of carries this more organic flow of conversation, even though they speak in sort of a lot of people speak in a very higher dialect. I don't know why I can't use my words today, but there's a lot of very like poetic or like flowery speech happening.
Old
but
English.
It's still happening. Yeah, it is Old English, but it's still happening in a more organic way, I find most of the time, than something like FF10, which is why that may contribute to cutscenes feeling like they go a little bit faster in FF12, which I agree that they do.
I'd say the only thing about the story that, obviously they weren't going to go back and do new cutscenes or anything, and I don't think that's necessarily the change. I would say that, Caitlin and I are roughly the same age, so we were playing this game at the same time. I was actually really ready for the adult storyline and the change in perspective to a, I say middle age, but what Bosch is in like his 30s, and that is frightening to me right now at 32. Oh, God. But like that was a really cool idea. But for me, I actually feel like 12 has the same problem as Final Fantasy Tactics, which is it starts out with this like very Game of Thrones style story, and I'm not just saying that for clickbait, for the love of God, but like very very political heavy story, lots and lots of characters, all based around their interactions with each other and planning and plotting and scheming, and then we deal
with your big demon final boss.
Yeah, then we get to the magical crystal nonsense, and I think that that doesn't damn the game from where I'm standing. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden it becomes bad, but I wish they had followed through with that. Like, Final Fantasy Tactics becomes so much less interesting, and Tactics Ogre has the same problem. Let Us Cling Together has the exact same problems. As soon as they start dealing with like magical stones that bring about demons, I start to lose interest. It doesn't completely kill the game for me, but where I was really excited to, take on these judges and learn more about Balthier, and you get some of that, at the same time you then are starting to deal with mystical stuff that is kind of inconsequential and not nearly as interesting as the opening of Final Fantasy XII, which is, I think, one of the strongest Final Fantasy openings.
Definitely, yeah.
I think there's something to be said about the power of when a supernatural element creeps into a story that's very grounded. If it's just a little bit, it can have a profound impact.
Yes.
And said that so eloquently.
Well,
I feel like
that's kind of how Game of Thrones. Which again, no clickbait. Sorry, guys. Game of Thrones does that with it's this very grounded, political, dark and gritty story, and then every now and then you get these moments of like, was that effing magic just now? And that's what makes it so cool.
And they've been leaking it in over the years, and to bring up the Game of Thrones point again, it was amazing to read some articles with the season premiere this past week, and people were like, there was one clickbait article, it's like, do the zombies ruin Game of Thrones? And I'm like, if you go back to the first episode of the first season, that's when they first introduced that there is some magic in this world, and so they establish it from the start. And so I think that, if we want to tell these political heavy storylines, I think Derek nailed it, to kind of incorporate a little bit of the mystical at a time. And Final Fantasy Tactics actually does a pretty good job with it until your brother is picking up a stone and turning into one of the worst boss fights ever in human existence. But like, by bringing it in slowly, it actually works in that grounded reality. And I think if Final Fantasy XII had been finished, because there's all the rumors and speculation about how much of it was actually finished, how much the story was changed. I mean, originally Bosch and Ash were going to be the main characters. Then they brought in Vaughn.
Ash is the main character, if you want to make that argument.
No, I would totally agree with you. But then Vaughn and Pinello were brought in to kind of appeal to a younger audience. And they actually don't bother me as much as they bother other people. But I think if we had gotten to play the true version of Final Fantasy XII, which is impossible at this point, I really would have liked to have seen them just continue with that political intrigue all the way instead of relying on, magic crystals.
As a counterpoint, though, I feel like Tactics relies on it a lot more than 12 does.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah,
you learn about the Zodiac Braves and what the stones actually do fairly early on in Tactics, whereas you don't. You get hints about Vana and the Ocuria in the first third of the game, but you don't really learn what the Ocuria are until relatively late in the story. Mm-hmm. And even once you learn about that, it isn't touched on a whole lot. They restrain a little bit. They keep the focus more on your party than on these supernatural beings. They're kept kind of in the mysterious background, which I actually kind of think works to their favor. Sometimes, games get into this pit hole where they try to explain their magic and their mysticism too much, try to make it too real, and that makes it sort of lose the kind of awe nature of it. So
I would agree with that
a bit. Yeah, I agree. It's a shame how much Final Fantasy XII seems to smack of cut content or at least repurposed content. Because I, for one, this is just totally conjecture, but I feel like with the number of espers in that game and the number of them being non-mandatory, there are 5 that appear in the story, and then like 7 or 10 or something more that are all just optional. I mean, come on. I feel like some of those had to have been incorporated into the story in some way. And as it is, they have, a lot of them have very interesting lore behind them, but you can play the entire game without even knowing they exist.
Yeah,
So
and there's dungeons at the beginning of the game that are so interesting where you're like dealing with the insects that are chewing on the electrical cords, and you have to go take them out. And at that point in the game, I was like, oh, each dungeon's going to have like a little kind of a gimmick sort of thing. Like, oh, that's really interesting. And then they just kind of dropped that, and I was like, oh, that was cool, but then you didn't do anything like it again. Like, I agree with you, Derek. I feel like there is a lot to this game that has been cut. But again, I don't want to swing the conversation negative because I think we do want to talk about how much work they actually did on this HD remaster. I mean, you guys hit on it a little bit at the start. This game is gorgeous for being a PlayStation 2 game on PlayStation 4. Like,
my God.
It's really good.
Yeah, that's the power of good art direction, right? Like, it was so good. They first of all, it had fantastic art design in terms of like architectural design and I think monster design and environments. But second of all, they actually rendered or created a lot of these assets at a higher resolution than the PlayStation 2 could even display. So they still had to do work to upscale them further, but like they had a strong base to begin with. Which is why what? Sorry?
Which is why, like, when you see images of the game, the PS2 original running at a higher resolution, they look amazing because, well, they were rendered like that, and then the PS2 just, couldn't handle displaying it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They did the new soundtrack, and I was really confused by their wording because, like, in the pre-order bonuses, it said that the original soundtrack was a pre-order bonus, but
I was confused by that too.
Can somebody explain that to me?
Yes. So the base game, no matter which version you get, has the reorchestrated soundtrack. That's what's on by default. And you can go to the original in-game PS2 BGM. That is the music you would have heard playing the PS2 game. If you have one of the versions of the game with the original soundtrack DLC, you get a third option, which is the CD soundtrack version of the PS2's soundtrack. So it's going to be higher quality sound than the PS2 BGM option. Although, ironically, and I said this at the time, that sometimes the in-game BGM from the PS2 version actually sounds clearer than the soundtrack version.
So
what's the best version?
Yeah, what's the best version?
The best version is the reorchestrated version.
Okay.
I would say it's up to the individual taste because some people really prefer like the original sort of.
I know for Final Fantasy X it was way more different, but I haven't noticed that much going back and forth between the two.
It is closer, I think, this time around.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. You don't have the case.
They didn't ruin Besaid Island this time around, for instance.
No.
Yeah, it's definitely not the drastic night and day difference of, especially the battle theme from FF10, which I love the original FF10 battle theme, and I don't hate the remastered one, but I just felt like it lost some of the oomph, and with the Final Fantasy XII reorchestrated version, you don't really get that significant or substantial loss in quality or sort of character even of each melody.
Derek, I love you, but the Final Fantasy X battle theme had no oomph.
No!
Oh man. Oh boy.
Really? I feel like the 10 battle theme has like 5 different really catchy sections that all sound totally distinct from one another.
It worked for the battle system, but I didn't really like listening to it off hours. Just like, yeah. Because I don't know, but it doesn't help that you'll probably hear it like 1,000 times.
Like any RPG, right?
Yeah, but like when I listen to Digital Devil Saga's battle theme, that thing got me pumped.
Oh yeah, me too.
And I listened to that 1,000 or more times. I was all totally cool with.
Yeah. I could agree that FF10's battle theme is a little bit more. I guess maybe it is more stimulating. Like there are
I'll agree with.
There are so many parts that are really bombastic and demand your attention orally.
Which is the vibe of the battle system, I find. Yeah. Like the kind of to and fro of the. Okay, anyways, off topic.
I want to agree with you. I really like the 10 battle theme, but I hear where you're coming from.
So if I play this, I need to go under the the remastered soundtrack. That's the
it'll be on by
reorchestrated. Yeah,
reorchestrated. Yeah,
and it is so great having real instruments in there. Makes a huge difference. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the original soundtrack. It's one of my favorites, but they did a great job with this. And
really hear that oboe when it flies.
Yes.
Another nice thing with the reorchestration is they've recorded a handful of new tracks to actually replace some of the ones where, like, there were some areas in the game where they just doubled up on an older song because they didn't record a song specifically for that area. And so now there are brand new tracks for all of those areas. I think there's like 7 or 10 somewhere around there, brand new tracks.
Actually really cool. Wow.
Yeah, so and they all sound so consistent with the existing soundtrack that you probably wouldn't know otherwise that they weren't there from the very beginning.
I was gonna say, it's like, oh my god, I did not realize that. Okay.
I want to say like Cerobi Steppe or Cheetah Uplands, one of those like sort of
Cheetah Uplands.
Okay, yeah, one of those generic-y.
It had the music from Giza Plains.
Okay, yeah. See, Caitlin knows.
Yeah, I know these
That's
things.
and then they have some. I think they have a new ending theme or something, and some other stuff. But yeah, it's soundtrack's phenomenal. And then we haven't even mentioned, of course, the fast forward stuff is amazing. The job system is amazing. They've added the new
job
trial
system.
mode.
The job system's a bit intimidating since you're pretty much locked out after you pick. So
It is a little intimidating. I agree with you, but
Pick
I like
good.
it.
Yeah.
I with FF12, one of my biggest complaints, aside from the sort of unfinished nature of the story, was the fact that every character was more or less identical because you had access to the same license board. So I find that even though I agree, I get stressed out by making permanent decisions in my video games. Like, don't make me choose forever. Let me undo it. Like, I wish there was at least a way to pay some kind of fee, or if there was a way in game to like reset your level, that would be fine. And be able to re-choose, and maybe they'll patch that in later or something.
Yeah, I got Van as a white mage, so I didn't want that.
He's gonna be my white mage too.
Yeah.
He's got good magic.
When I played a
This was the
little
worst.
bit. I played a little bit of the international version, which had the Zodiac job system, and I was also intimidated. Like, oh my god, I have to make a decision right here. And now with this new Zodiac job system, you actually pick a second class, and people have been talking about how, in a way, that sort of lets you break the game the way Final Fantasy Tactics does. Like, you can come up with some insane combinations, and that I feel like they've really embraced what makes job systems so much fun, is when, like, all of a sudden you have a knight running around wielding 2 swords and having blade grasp and like all of these crazy things that you can do. That sounds like a really, really good idea that plays to Final Fantasy 12's strength, which is the gameplay. For all of our complaining about the story and about issues with the dungeons, everybody seems to really, really like the story, and it sounds like they doubled down on the right aspect of the game.
The gameplay, you mean?
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, gameplay. Sorry, got tired.
It's okay. Yeah, no, I agree. And I was a little surprised because when I was building my characters, my initial thought was, okay, I should be picking sort of 2 jobs that really complement or overlap to a degree. So I should make a character like a white mage and a black mage so that they can draw from a really big pool of mana. But it seems like in Final Fantasy 12 HD, you actually want to pick jobs that are fairly disparate.
Yes.
So that, because you can't double up on a lot of the same licenses. So like if there's the swiftness license, which makes all character actions increase by 10%, like speed up by 10%. I can't talk. So like if you have 2 jobs and they both have 3 swiftnesses, like you can only unlock the 3 once each time, and then that's it. And then you'll have other characters that are left without any swiftness, maybe because you didn't pick them jobs that have access to it. Although I think they probably all have access to like at least one.
And things like the magic lores and the battle lores, which increase your magic and your physical, your strength appropriately, those double up too. So while it sounds like a good idea to have 2 mages together, you're not necessarily going to get like double the magical power because they will be doubling up on their magic lores to a certain extent. But you can flip that and say, well, look at a physical class like Samurai. Katanas use strength and magic to determine their attack power. So you want to have a good balance of strength and magic, and Samurai doesn't have a whole lot of strength, a whole lot of battle lores on its board by itself, which is why it pairs nicely with other classes like Knight or Monk or Ulan/Lancer that have a lot of battle lores. You still get some overlap, but you get the bonus of having the extra strength in those classes. But I mean, like, there's so many different potential combinations, and definitely there are some that are more ideal, more more ideal than others in terms of sort of combining licenses without overlap. But it's not like you're going to find yourself stuck because you picked the wrong classes and you can't progress.
You can basically flow with all of them.
Yeah, I think worst case scenario, you'll be stuck using characters you didn't intend to use because you're like, well, damn it, I guess I really needed a knight in my party, so I made Penilla my knight, and I wasn't going to use her, but I'm going to have to use her now because I need to get through this section. Like, that's probably the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I think the worst thing is if you don't plan out who your healers are going to be or who's going to get access to white magic. I mean, you can use every job by having every character have a different job, no overlap, or you can pick multiple jobs. Everyone can be knight if you want them to be. So you could potentially, if depending on what jobs you pick, find yourself in a situation where you don't have a whole lot of people who can cast high level white magic, and that could be challenging in itself. But then you just have to double up on item lores and things like that.
Yeah.
When do you open up the second job class?
You can access the second license board after you get the first Esper, which is it's part of this main story.
That's not too far into the game, if I remember correctly.
No.
That's
I
actually
didn't
really
beat
cool.
FF12 originally, but yeah, I even got to that point.
And if Final Fantasy 12 also isn't a super long game unless you go down the path of like doing all the
Endgame stuff.
yeah, unless you go
Caitlin has multiple times.
right.
Yes.
But I actually think that plays really well to the experimentation of the game and the fast forwarding. I mean, you hear about all those games done quick, which I got really big into watching that last week.
Yeah,
I was watching like every single one.
GDQ.
But like people always get together to replay Final Fantasy V because of all the crazy combinations you can do with that game. The thing that I struggle with, and I think that's why Zodiac Age is going to appeal to me, is that when I have a choice, I tend to like go down one path and then I don't really change. And so like we talked about that came up in Transistor. Remember, Derek, you pointed out like I found a combination that worked for me, and then I just used it the entire way through the game. Like, you would think that the science person in me would want to experiment, but no, what I actually go for is like ruthless efficiency. And so if I'm being efficient, I'm like, well, why change what I'm doing if everything's working? But since everything is so broken up in Zodiac Age and Final Fantasy Tactics for that matter, that makes you want to try different combinations, and that could lead to a lot of replay value with Zodiac Age.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
I already want to redo it. Like, I'm not 100% satisfied with the choices that I made for all of my characters, and not enough to restart the entire game, but I'm already sort of planning out a subsequent playthrough, which is rare for me, especially so quickly after beating it, which I haven't even beaten this one yet. Yeah, the possibilities are really quite abundant, and I think, as we were saying, it's not like you can really totally ruin your save by picking the wrong things. If anything, there's advantages to be gained, which I didn't know this the first time through, but characters actually have different animation speeds for certain weapon types and stuff. So like the funny thing is Balthier starts with a gun, and he's sort of a cannon gun wielder, but he actually has the slowest gun firing animation of all the characters.
Yeah, I remember that from the original game.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
And how frustrating that was.
Yeah, so if you really want to min-max, you could pick characters that have the best animations and the best jobs or the best stat distribution and stuff, but
or you can pick lore compliant jobs, which is something I try to do. I have been trying to do in my playthrough, which is to pick jobs that fit the characters based on either their weapon type that they were first seen with, or in their promotional art, or the job that sort of fits their archetype. Like Bosch is he's not a knight, then he's a samurai, or he's both. So I mean, he has to be one of or both of those.
Yeah,
I do find myself just kind of like wincing just a little bit that like the girls are typically more magical oriented. I'm like, oh, come on.
I think actually, doesn't Vaughn actually have really good magical stats?
Vaughn and Fran are like the kind of like good in betweeners, I think. Penilla and Ash are best with magic, and Balthier and the other one.
Vaughn has good all around stats.
Yeah.
He can do just about anything well. Fran a little bit less so.
Poor Fran.
Balthier and Ash Balthier and Bosch are the worst at magic. Although you can still compensate for that. One of the popular pairings is to have to pair Machinist with White Mage, and a lot of people put Balthier on that duty, even though he has lower magic and lower MP than the girls. And that can work because White Mage gets a lot of magic lore, and Machinist actually gets a fair amount of magic lore too to complement White Mage.
Yeah, see, this is the best part about the game, is that it is 11 years old. I already know what happens with the story, and yet I'm just excited to re-experience this world and to build a cool party.
I think that like a lot of more newer MMOs and certainly like the popularity of like Xenoblade or kind of those sort of MMO style like Monster Hunter games really opened up the gates a bit more.
Hmm.
So I wonder if it was just like, literally maybe Final Fantasy XII was just way too ahead of its time and it just didn't really sit right at first, and with people's expectations following
Yes.
10 and all that.
Yeah, to a degree, for sure.
Well, and we also have to be careful that we don't rewrite history. I mean, the fact that everybody had the exact same license board when the game first came
That's
out.
true, yeah. That
That-
was a bit of a downer.
That was a mistake, because that led exactly to the problem I talked about a minute ago, where I just made the same character 3 times. And yes, that's boring. And yes, you could look at me and say, well, you weren't doing it right. But I also didn't die the whole way through the game until the final boss, where the spells wouldn't load. And apparently they've fixed that.
Yes.
So that's good.
Wait, what did you glitch?
So, well, I always glitch. I got to the last boss, and he started like actually hurting me, and so I had gambits on all my characters to start healing each other, and all the spells loaded, but he was in the middle of like trying to launch his mega nuke.
Mhm.
And for whatever reason, the mega nuke like took precedent over everything else, even though all my characters were ready to go.
Yeah.
And so I just kept getting hit over and over and over again until I just died. And that was
That-
actually the last time I played Final Fantasy XII.
That's a limitation of the PS2 original. They couldn't have multiple spell effects going off at the same time. So you could have multiple characters who their AT bars are charged up and they're ready to cast their spell, but they have to wait one after the other because you can't have them casting at the same time.
Oh, sure.
That has been fixed. That is no longer a thing. Spell queue is gone in the PS4 version. The damage cap is also gone in the PS4 version.
Nice.
I think they've reorganized how quickenings work. I believe they're no longer based off of, you don't use your MP.
Yes, thank God
anymore.
for that. Oh my God! Because I used to hate the fact that they used MP, and I never wanted to use them because it was like, all right, I either try to do one hit and hope I beat the enemy, or that's it, or just use magic and never use quickenings. So not
Yeah.
only did they fix that, which I absolutely love, you can control espers now and guests, which is super cool. So you can actually like these huge cool looking summons. Before they would just sort of do their own thing. Now you can actually switch over and make them do whatever you want to do. So I think there were some summons actually that their ultimate attacks, it was really hard to get them to trigger them because you had to meet very specific conditions.
Yeah, they
So-
have their own gambit set up.
And
Yeah.
does it still work where when you unlock the quickenings, like you get that huge MP boost? Because that was also really weird in the game. It was like all of a sudden I had triple the amount of MP because I opened up the quickenings, and I was like barely out of the first area of the game. Like,
I'm
does
trying
that
to think.
still?
I don't know if it boosts your MP anymore, but it definitely just you have missed charges as a separate resource from MP regardless. Of your
Okay.
So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
it does boost MP. I really can't remember. But
And again,
Well,
go ahead.
That's another, I think, good thing about the job license boards is how quickenings and espers appear on them. In the original license board, everything was just on the edge. Nothing was hidden behind quickenings or espers. They were just usually on the edge or anywhere. You could still get to every license regardless of who had which esper or in which order you picked your quickenings. But with the job license boards here in Zodiac Age, and I'm presuming this is the same in the International Zodiac job system, there are certain licenses that are locked behind quickenings and espers, which adds an additional level of strategy beyond just which jobs are you going to give which characters. Now you have to think about which espers do I want to have on which characters based on what bonuses they will give to those jobs, and then also which quickening should I pick? I mean, it works the same sort of way that you have, that whichever quickening you pick first is your first quickening, and then second and third. But there are different technical licenses for them, and there are different extra licenses hidden behind some, not all, but some of those quickenings. So it adds an extra strategy, especially when you consider that unlocking a license on one board automatically unlocks the same license on your second job board. So where you pick your quickening and your esper on your first job will also unlock it on your second job. And you have to sort of strategize, which one do I want on this character with this job?
right. So like say you unlock your second job board and you're like, all right, I'm going to unlock this quickening for Vaughn in this space. you may find that when you switch to your other job board for Vaughn, he's got a space that's unlocked that's like way at the far end where you haven't been unlocking anything yet, and maybe that's next to like HP plus 500 or something, which doesn't break the game, but it gives you a significant advantage if you plan it well enough, like at least for a little while. So, and this is absolutely sort of a meta strategy that's beyond what the average player is going to need to do to beat the game, but it's cool. Like there's just a lot more possibility there, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like the whole thing is bringing this game that much closer to tactics than the original version. I mean, you could restrict yourself in the original version, and people would do that, where they would specifically only have characters unlock licenses that were relevant to a certain preset self-determined job, and that can be fun if you have the willpower to do it. I never did. But having the job system like this and having it be enforced and having to really think about what jobs I want to use and who I want to use them has sort of, just like I said, it brings it, I think, spiritually that much closer to tactics. And that's great because they're both Ivalice games. They're both in the same.
I love those kind of the Yoshida-esque portraits that they have for the main cast too, for like stat stuff. I'm so sad they got rid of the Pirate's Den too. I guess it's all trophies. Nothing made me feel like it was tactics more than that. So I'm so sad to see that go.
Yes, I'll bring it back. So I don't care if I get it all unlocked immediately on successive playthroughs. I want it.
Yeah, that was always something to look forward to and something worth achieving. Like that was my achievement to me. But yeah. I also think Moogles are cute as hell in this version. I really hope we get another Ivalice game that brings back like Bonga and all that stuff because they're really cool races in the series.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted a Bonga party member so
I'm
bad.
so sad they don't have that. Yeah, the same thing happened with Xenoblade Chronicles X. They introduced you a whole bunch of cool species. None of them are playable. It's just the humans.
I would really like
Shopkeeper dude.
That's what I like about like Breath of Fire, where it's like basically everybody in your party is not human in some way.
I would just like a Final Fantasy Tactics game on Switch. No little kids running around a storybook. I want like hardcore political intrigue. Like, let's do this. Yeah. So now, do we think? I know someone's going to complain about this, but I'm saying it because it's for me. It's my preference. I would probably wait to pick this up if I knew it was coming to PC. And since they brought Final Fantasy X and X-2 to PC, I think it's
pretty likely. Yeah.
I think it has a shot, and the reason I like bringing things to PC mostly is because I know that my PC is always going to be backwards compatible. Like if I can buy it on Steam, then like down the road when I buy a new PC, I don't have to worry about that. If Sony would tell me tomorrow that the PlayStation 5 was going to be backwards compatible with the 4, I'd probably go out and get Zodiac Age right now. How awesome would this game be on Switch? Do you think there's any chance that they?
If anything, like you talking about Final Fantasy Tactics series, I feel like that's a great place to continue the series. Would be on the Switch.
Yeah, but what about Final Fantasy 12 on?
I want it on the Switch. I mean, I want everything on the Switch.
I was gonna say, I don't care what gets ported where. I'm just happy when it happens.
I wonder where my Switch went. I think Steph stole it at E3. I've been looking all over. Who knows?
Jackie was very hospitable. She pointed me to it, and that was it. I took it, pet the cat, and left.
I would just love you pet one of the cats. There's 4 of them. I think, part of me, I still like playing my PlayStation 4, but it's not where I would primarily like to do my gaming. And so if I found out tomorrow that this was coming out on the Switch or the PC, that's probably where I would play it. And I kind of hope so, but then we haven't seen Kingdom Hearts 2.5 HD Remix 3008/5 2018 days.
Every time you bring it up, you got to do that.
I have to do it.
They bring it on themselves.
I don't blame it. Yeah.
That hasn't come to PC. Fair. And so like Square Enix is, on the one hand, they brought almost every Final Fantasy game to the PC, but we're still waiting on like Kingdom Hearts, which is a huge seller for them. And so I don't know if Zodiac Age is going to come to PC or not. So I'm kind of playing the waiting game right now.
I'd put money on that. I think they'll do it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so. So everybody seems happy with it. I think it's really awesome. this is the proper way to do an HD remake. It looks like very much the same way we were talking a little bit about, the Dragon Quest VIII 3DS remake. Go in and fix the things that were kind of wrong with your game. In Dragon Quest VIII, the battles were pretty slow, and you couldn't actually see what you were leveling up to. That's probably a problem. With Final Fantasy XII, they put that job system in. They've given you even more flexibility. And then, the dungeons, which can maybe get a little grindy, they let you go through them that much faster. And people are actually enjoying grinding in this game because the Gambit system's a lot of fun, and now you can move around the environment really fast.
Yep.
Good on you, Square Enix.
It's great fun. Oh, and then I was briefly mentioning that this has the new trial mode as well, which was in the international Zodiac job system version in Japan. It is 100 stage gauntlet of fights against a bunch of new enemy configurations. Many of these are enemies that were already in the game, just sort of in a new setup. And the earlier stages especially, you can really speed through, especially with the new fast forward. But towards the end, you get some unique boss fights that weren't in the original FF12, including you get to fight the judges that were not bosses in the main story.
Ah, sweet.
Yeah. So.
My smart self was going to say fightable. That are not fightable, and you're like, that were not present. I'm just, crap.
Yeah, the other one. There were some bosses, especially one in particular, who the main party doesn't even meet.
Mm-hmm.
Which always pissed me off because I was like, what the hell? So that boss or that judge in particular is included in the trial mode as a boss.
It does suck that Final Fantasy XII is totally like a victim of just incomplete storytelling. Like that one was really obvious.
Yeah. And we can't expect them to go in and fix all that for the HD remake, but it sounds like they've done enough with this game that it's probably the best Final Fantasy game you can play on PlayStation 4 right now, right?
Yes.
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can play FF14.
I did want to posit something, and it's not just because I'm cynical or I'm looking for a fight, but I think you could also make the argument that the high praise that this game is getting right now is also, I think, kind of a reaction to the fact that this is the closest thing we've had to a traditional, air quotes, Final Fantasy. 13 was divisive. I think everybody can agree on that, at least divisive. We had the MMO in 14, which is really, really good, but if you're not an MMO person, you're not really going to play that. And, 15, people seem to be cooling on that game pretty quickly. Like, it got a lot of praise and people were really excited. But, as we talked a little bit about the Zelda saga, the Zelda cycle a couple episodes ago, I kind of feel like 15's going through its own little cycle where people are looking back on it and going, yeah, that was fun, but there was some serious problems with that. And I said on the pre-show, I would much rather play Final Fantasy 12 right now than 15. Like, I have almost zero.
Yeah.
I knew I liked you, Rob.
I feel like Final Fantasy 12 kind of irons out what made Final Fantasy 15 not as good.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like it drags it under a microscope. Actually,
Yeah.
especially if you were to play them back to back, you would almost think like, wait a second, which one is 12 and which one is 15?
I mean,
Like,
The open world
outside
thing
of the
was a bold
graphics.
idea, but I guess it just did not really pan out as well, or they just didn't really do enough with it.
Yeah.
As opposed to FF12, where it did actually kind of give you a bit more guidance in what it wanted.
And I just
I don't
never,
know.
I just never really had fun with that battle system in Final Fantasy 15. Like, it was unique the first time I started doing it, but then, like, as I'm just wildly swinging and not seeing any enemies and not having any idea what's going on, I was like, man, I wish I could just like assign gambits right now. Like, I kind of enjoy that. I like that tack. And again, I'm not, trying to start a fight with Final Fantasy 15, but I think on some level, it's not just the fact that 12 has gotten this really, really great HD version. I think it's also the fact that people are kind of craving a traditional Final Fantasy game right now. And 12 is, even though it was wildly different for the time, it is way closer to a Final Fantasy game than I think 15.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
It also has Bosch and Balthier, and they are awesome. And whatever Fran's accent is that Icelandic?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. I got.
It does make me sad that
She's just Bjork. Like just Bjork is.
No,
walking
that's
around.
actually literally that was sort of their idea was to use they I think Alexander Smith name dropped Bjork when he's been talking about the localization and said, wouldn't that be interesting because the sort of the secluded sort of mystical nature of the Viera, you know, they're all living together in this wood separated from the rest of the races, so let's give her this really sort of outlandish accent that's different from everyone else, and it really does work, especially if you switch to the Japanese language track and you hear her Japanese voice, which is a much lower, sultry kind of voice, and it's very typical, I would think, for the kind of character, you know, the sort of the strong, silent, beautiful bombshell type of character. They're great voices. I love the Japanese cast too, but Fran's voice just takes you so much by surprise, and much more so, I think, than any other voice from the main cast.
Mm-hmm.
It worked. I liked it.
I adore the English voice acting and the writing in 12.
Yes, and
I think
I'll
that's
say,
yeah, it does catch you off guard, though. You know, she has kind of almost like a unique kind of rhythm to her voice that, you know,
Yeah.
does sound non-human.
Two quick questions. Do they all still sound like they're talking in chapels, and do they still say Marquis over and over again?
unfortunately, they've improved the audio quality somewhat. It's not quite as bad as it was in the original game. It still sounds kind of like they were recording in a location that didn't have a lot of necessary, you know, sound design or proofing or whatnot. Everything sounds really flat and a little
Insulation.
staticky.
They use little Dixie cups for, you know, a popper.
Yeah. It's still better. So it's an improvement over the original, but it's still noticeably of lesser quality than what you would necessarily expect, especially when you go from the CG cutscenes, which sound fine, to the in-game stuff. So an improvement, but there's no way they were going to 100% fix that without going back and re-recording the entire game, and they weren't going to do that. So
And they
This
still say Marquis, huh?
Yeah, they didn't re-record.
oh yeah.
It's a stylistic choice.
I know. It's a game that I really do want to get back into. I like the international version when I tried it. It still didn't grab me, but I think with the improvements to this version, it might finally do it. I never hated Final Fantasy 12. It just felt unfinished. Like that was the thing. It felt like it needed another 6 months to go in, fix some things, add some things. But the core idea of playing a Final Fantasy game that is, you know, C++ for Junior is awesome to me. Like that's the part of the game I really liked. It's just, you know, I don't think it quite got there, but with this re-release, you know, 11 years later, this game is getting its due. And that's really cool.
I actually would have no problem if games took their sweet time more to create games, you know, I hate when people are upset about delays. To me, that's just a chance for them to keep polishing it up.
Yeah.
If Final Fantasy 15 took another 2 years to make it as perfect as it could be, I would have welcomed it. I was like that, there's that Shigeru Miyamoto quote, he's a delayed game is eventually good, but a bad game is bad forever.
Yeah.
And I've always
I would
liked
agree.
that, and I really wish that, you know, more game companies were intent on following through on that. So
Well,
we don't
that's-
have to talk about incompleteness.
That's why CD Projekt Red, they're like my heroes right now because they're sticking to their guns with Cyberpunk 2077. They're not showing us anything. We've not seen anything of that game since like the original sort of teaser trailer, and they keep, you know, whenever they're asked, it'll come when it's done, not before. And
Good answer.
yeah, it's a good answer.
I would agree. So let's depart Dalmasca and leave Final Fantasy 12. I know.
We will be coming back though because Derek and I are going to talk about the Return to Ivalice raid when 4.1 hits in Final Fantasy 14.
Oh
Trust
yeah, I
me.
can't wait for that. It's gonna be great.
So I'd say the only thing that I was really doing was I increased my download speed in the house, and so I just was looking for any excuse to start downloading video games and seeing how fast it would go. It was really cool to like download 30 gigs in about 25 minutes. That felt awesome compared to the slow ass internet I have, and that made me download a whole bunch of games on Steam. And I couldn't really find something I wanted to stick with until I went back to
Undertale.
No, not yet. Almost. Now Steven's yelling at me to play that. So I actually went back to XCOM 2, which came out in early 2016, and I really didn't like it when it first came out. It was really buggy, had a whole host of problems. I mean, there were moments where the game would just lock up for 30 seconds. And I was like, "Oh, my hard drive must be failing." No, that was a bug, and everybody was experiencing it. So I went back to it now, and it was kind of weird. It plays much better now. There's still no excuse that it has some significant performance issues, but Firaxis is not really known for making action games that run at 60 frames per second. They're known for making Civilization. But it was weird that they talked about how with XCOM 2 they wanted to open it up to the mod community. They were like, "Oh, we're going to give you mod tools from day one. We want people to create things for this game, blah, 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 blah." And so when I started playing vanilla XCOM 2, there were certain things that weren't in the game that were actively pissing me off. So you're talking about a game that plays similar to Final Fantasy Tactics, where it's grid-based, turn-based strategic combat. And there were moments of like, well, I don't know if I move to that position whether or not I get a flanking bonus against an enemy. That's kind of necessary information in a strategy game. Like, that's what makes it a strategy game. That's what allows me to go in and actually plan out my tactics instead of a giant guessing game of, oh, am I even going to see the enemy over here? There were also some UI problems here and there, like, wow, do I really have to go through this menu every time in order to do this, do that? And then I loaded it up with a bunch of mods that fixed all those issues, and I started really enjoying the game. But then I started saying to myself, why didn't the developers do this? Like, is it lazy game design for them to rely on a mod community to fix things?
Dude, I'm still pissed that Breath of the Wild does not let you go into your, change your inventory when your inventory is full.
Yeah.
The simplest things. I hate when it is missed, and I love and adore the mod community for actually stepping up.
Yeah, and like, at the risk of bringing up the Fallout 4 discussion again, but like there were certain things in Fallout 4 that I was like, why isn't this in the base game? And it felt like Bethesda took the approach of, well, the mod community will take care of it. And I kind of agree with Derek and Steph, like, that's kind of unacceptable to me. Like, the mod community should be there to, like, I don't know, make it so I can make the cast a Street Fighter in XCOM, or like give me new clothing options, or
the nude mods.
Oh no, not that. But like make it so, there's one really cool mod for XCOM 2 that brings like 60 new enemy types with like new abilities into the game. Like, that's really cool stuff. But like a mod to give me free camera control, like, so I don't just have 4 different viewpoints, I can actually swing the camera around 360 degrees. Like, why isn't that standard in the game? I had to get a mod for this game because it does a weird thing with the save menu where when you scroll down, it doesn't scroll, it jumps. So like the first time I went into the save menu, I was like, wait a minute, like I pressed down once and the whole screen shifted and now I'm highlighting something different. There was a mod to fix the scrolling speed in a save window. Like, what the actual hell? Like, and don't get me wrong, I got fully back into XCOM 2. I really had a lot of fun with it. I still have some issues with the way the game handles line of sight and enemy encounters. Like, it behooves you to encounter the enemies at the start of your term. If you run into them at the end of the term, they're probably going to kill somebody early on in the game. So you're kind of gaming the system a little bit, but it just feels like some of these things should actually be in the game, and I don't know if the mod community will take care of it is a good enough argument for me. So that was interesting. I played through a whole campaign of that. The expansion, War of the Chosen, comes out in August, and that actually adds something similar to the Shadow of Mordor Nemesis system with like 3 big bad alien types that will chase you around missions and get stronger and get new weapons if you don't manage to kill them. It also is incorporating a bunch of cast members from the Next Generation. So like Deanna Troi is the leader of the Reavers, which is a group of like stealthy assassin characters that you can get. And so that's giving me like flashbacks to Gargoyles on the Disney Channel of like having a reunion of TNG. So
she was in that.
Everybody was in that. Okay. Jonathan Frakes was in that. Brent Spiner was in that. Yes, everybody was in that. That's why Gargoyles was amazing until that last season on ABC Saturday, which was pretty pretty damn terrible. Right? I mean, you basically had Goliath fighting the Ku Klux Klan, but for gargoyles. Anywho, it got really weird. But yeah, that looks really cool, and I think XCOM has gotten to a point where that mod community can add so much to the game. But in the back of my head, I'm just going, is Firaxis kind of getting away with murder? Much the same way that I think, like with Bethesda and their games, like some of the things in Bethesda games, it feels like they've just said, mod community will take care of it. We've moved on to other things.
And it's also because they've sort of galvanized themselves with this, I think, total BS community that's willing to accept bugs because they're features, they're not bugs. Like, I think that's bull. I understand that a game of that scale is going to have issues that need to be ironed out. Like, I'm not saying that they need to release a perfect game on day one, or that it's sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, realistic for that to happen. But the amount of apologism is frankly baffling to me, and I will never accept it.
Yeah.
So this is another situation in which, like, it's great that there is a community and sort of people out there who are into engineering better solutions to these issues, but it's not expected. Like, it shouldn't be par for the course. That's the thing. Like, they should be working on doing it themselves, which is easy for me to say as somebody who's not actively developing games on that scale. So whatever.
No, but I think it's true, and I would recommend XCOM to people who like the original game. I think they did a really good job with XCOM 2. I started to get used to a lot of the nuance with the game and some of the features that I didn't quite get to in my first run. The only other thing that it really made me focus on is like difficulty curve, and we've talked a little bit about this before. Like, the beginning part of that game is so freaking hard. Like, one mistake and your guys will just die, but by the end of the game you have like a squad of gods who will just obliterate everything in the game, and nothing can really stand up to you. And I mentioned before, I was playing a little bit of Pillars of Eternity, and I'll admit I was getting really frustrated at the start because, as I said at E3, those damn boars, they killed me again. And I know, like, that game gets easier as you go, but I'm like, you know, Witcher 2 had this problem to an extent. Witcher 3 did, but not nearly as bad as Witcher 2. Like, these games that start out so murderously hard at the beginning, and then they just get stupid easy. I'm reaching a point as a gamer where that's an instant turnoff for me. Like, I like the difficulty to rise as I play through the game and I learn my power set. And
I feel like a lot of Zelda games are like that, where it's like, when you start with 3 hearts, it's a really, really tough thing to get.
Yeah.
Like, you just die in Breath of the Wild. Like, the first moblin can kill you. Just like, hi, how you doing, death?
Yeah.
And like, I appreciate that in that game, and I get what they're going for, but there's something about like a super high difficulty curve at the beginning of the game that I find very unappealing. And I know somewhere somebody's going, well, what about the graveyard in Dark Souls? And I'm like, yeah, Dark Souls 1, that graveyard is kind of ridiculous, but you don't have to go there. And also Dark Souls 3, which is the game that I would recommend to people to play if they wanted to play one of these games the first time, the opening areas of that game are actually fairly doable and very forgiving compared to the rest of the series. Like, you don't die in 2 hits in the opening area in Dark Souls 3. They actually, like, it takes a lot of hits to actually kill you, and it teaches you how to play the game, and then it gets harder as you go. If I run into a brick wall at the start of the game, like if I die on your second fight in the game, hello, Pillars of Eternity, that's probably going to be me turning the game off. Like, no. Like, I'm not going to do that. And maybe that's me getting older. Maybe I just need to get good, but I don't have a lot of patience for games that are like smacking you around at the very start and then making you into a god directly afterward.
I think it's less an issue of needing to get good and more of an issue of balance. Something can be difficult, but I think it needs to ramp up appropriately, which of course is like a very sweeping statement that I can't apply universally to every game ever made. But in general, I think it's better to have an easy balance curve, you know? Like, let it be hard, but let it get hard. Don't let it start just stupid punishing for no reason. Yeah, and that's a good way to turn you off of, especially of an RPG, like something where stats are hugely important. Please don't make it so that it's impossible to win early battles until I can leverage all of the abilities at my disposal. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really bad in games that are stat focused, like because that is a layer. And somebody's gonna say, "Well, why are you writing for RPG fan if you don't like RPGs?" And it's like, well, let me explain. If there's nothing I can do because my stats just aren't high enough, and also I don't have access to a lot of abilities, that just makes for a frustrating experience. And like XCOM, you're so limited at the start of the game. Like you only have like basic rifle attacks and like one grenade per character. By the end of the game, you have like 4 or 5 different abilities that just let you demolish the battlefield. Like you have so much more versatility that like encounters that easily would have killed me at the start of the game, you're making me fight the same enemies at the end of the game, but now I am just stupid strong. And the only way you're going to beat me is through numbers. That's actually one of the reasons I'm really excited for this expansion, because like I think games like Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Ogre, and XCOM, they really struggle with boss encounters. Like you can tell they want to do a boss encounter. They're like, let's do something that's really different. But when they do, they end up just making an enemy that either hits really hard or just has a stupid number of hit points that you have to overcome. That's not really interesting to me. I like it when there are abilities and challenges. I actually came to really like the mission timers in XCOM 2, and I know I complained about that a year ago when I first played it. Like, I really didn't like those mission timers, but they ended up making me play the game differently, and they were a far better stress than like, oh, here's this character that just has double damage and double hit points. Like, no, I need to get to this objective and hack this computer before it explodes. That was way more stress on me as a gamer, and I really, really liked that.
So you're saying that they're better than the boss battles in Deus Ex?
Why would you bring that up? I really, but I think Caitlin will back me up on this. I really like one of those last encounters in Mankind Divided where you have to like take out all the terrorists stealthily.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome.
Yes,
that was so satisfying.
That was such an adrenaline rush. Excuse me.
That was like a Hitman level in the middle of Deus Ex, and a very well done way of like raising the stakes without giving me a metered boss fight. And don't get me wrong, I love boss fights. I feel like that's all I'm doing this episode. It's like the apologist episode. Who is taking pictures right now? What?
What are you doing, Steph? I know.
I was looking at pictures and I saw a pretty picture. I took a picture of the picture.
Okay.
But like raising the stakes in a different way. I love boss fights, but not every kind of huge action in a game needs to be a boss fight. I like going through different experiences and trying different things. And I think XCOM's mission timers actually ended up making the game better in a lot of ways and keeping me from just playing it very, very safe and very like, you know, not really taking any risks. I thought that was really good. I'd recommend it to people. Derek, I'm not quite sure if you would like it, but I think like the Final Fantasy Tactics guy in you might want to give it a try.
My boyfriend plays a ton of XCOM. I've watched him play it for probably like 30, 40 hours. And that's good for me. It's fine. He gets really stressed out by it.
It is a super stressful game. Like there were moments like in the mid game where I was, you know, so close to death that like just a complete disaster of like losing all my people. I did make a couple people from RPG fans. Steph, you have like 50 kills. Good job on you.
Oh.
Yeah, you're one of my heavy chain gunners. You are.
I can see that. Yeah.
You're Steph. I wanted to name you Canadian Bacon as your nickname, but it was too long, so I went with Canada Dry. I hope that's okay. And for
I understand where the nickname came from.
There it is. And then for War of the Chosen, I'm probably going to make Derek. Derek, I see you as a sniper. Is that okay?
Sure.
Does that work for you?
That's not in line with what I usually play, but that's fine.
Well, what do you usually play?
Usually like a caster.
Ooh,
So,
okay. I might make you a Templar. That's one.
Mine totally works for my like get the biggest weapon possible style and go hack people with it. So yeah, I appreciate yours.
It's gonna work when we do Dark Stuff and we walk you through Dark Souls.
I got plenty of time these days.
It's gonna work.
Oh my God.
So XCOM 2, really, really good. I would recommend the PC version so you can mod it up. I played it with the controller. I really liked playing it. I like sitting back at my computer and playing with the controller. But yeah, you got to mod it up a little bit to get it to a point where it's a lot of fun and reduce some of the obfuscation that really shouldn't be there. But overall, really, really good.
So who am I? What am
I haven't made you yet, Caitlin. I haven't made Salbato yet either.
Wait, I'm not born yet?
No, you're not born yet.
I'm not alive?
You're not born yet.
We're talking to a ghost.
I like that her mic kind of fizzled out as she was saying, "I haven't been born yet."
It worked out well.
Yeah, totally Back to the Future, Danya.
Phasing out of existence.
Erased from existence.
Uh-oh, I have to go and make sure my parents fall in love with the Enchantment Under the Sea dance.
But now your dad is flirting with you.
Now I'm once again angry that Jackie did not let me use Earth Angel as our first dance song.
Oh. What was it?
We used Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh,
How cute.
That's a good one.
It was really good, but Earth Angel is like that makes me tear up when I hear that. Like that's part of my childhood right there. I love Back to the Future. She wanted to use some Josh Groban song or something. The amount of money that Josh Groban has gotten from me and my family is getting a little ridiculous right now. We went to Great Comet a couple weeks ago, so he like walked right by me. He had a good beard though. I couldn't fault him that. So that was a lot of fun.
I was so sad and happy that, when you said Ed Sheeran was on Game of Thrones because of for Maisie Williams' birthday. I thought that was so cute.
Yeah, like and of course the internet being the giant hate-filled beast that it is, just this is why we can't have nice things. Like this really, really nice, sweet moment.
Yeah. What is that? I don't really understand. Like, what's the issue? Why don't people like him?
I think people just don't like Ed Sheeran. Steph, did you say it in the pre-show? People just don't like Ed Sheeran because he's popular right now.
Probably. I don't know.
It's like people that go out. I had a friend on Facebook made a really good post where they were like, if the first thing you're going to do is post on Facebook tonight about how like I don't like Game of Thrones, it's stupid. Can you just let people like the thing they're going to like and like get off of it? This is like when people. It's like when people.
Game of Thrones parties. It sounded great.
It's like when people were bagging on Pokemon Go, and I was like, "Oh no, people are going outside and interacting with each other and having fun." God forbid!
It's like being the grumpy old man in the corner, yelling at the clouds. Just like, who cares? Leave it.
Old man yells at clouds.
Yeah.
I mean that's what it is. Ah, people.
A bunch of bastards.
I find myself saying that pretty often. Yeah.
So Steph wanted to talk about a little Famitsu list, and I think this is a good place to kind of wrap up the podcast. What is this? The top 50 RPGs of all time?
Nah, I don't really know the number. I don't care. But anyways, yeah, so Famitsu polled a whole bunch of people. They got about 2,300 votes. Pretty evenly split between males and females, all things considered. And they voted on their top, I think it's 20 favorite RPGs. So I'm going to go from descending order all the way up. So what actually ranked last of the best was, throwing in some Western love, was Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Yay, that's cool.
They'll throw us a bone to our white man RPGs. Okay.
I was going to say, I literally think it's the only Western-made RPG
but it is, to be fair, it is probably the most impactful on the entire genre right now.
It's very good. And you know what? I actually still think, with the location of where the poll takes place, I think that's actually pretty impressive. So
yeah,
I'm not trying to bag on them for that. So after that, Final Fantasy 7 and 9, which in my opinion 9 was ranked way too low, but hey.
No, Final Fantasy 8.
I could have done without that, but hey, people like it.
No, I'm looking at the list right now. It's Final Fantasy 8. 7 is way higher.
No, did I say 8? Okay.
You said 7.
Whatever. Okay, so yeah, 8 and 9. Earthbound, sure, I think it could be higher too. Final Fantasy 6. Dragon Quest 4.
Dragon Quest 4 is pretty good, but I better see an 8 and a 5 up there if we're talking about 4 right now.
I don't think 8 made it.
That's wrong.
5 did.
That's wrong.
8 did not. Persona 4 Golden. So that is the first of the Persona games that made it. Xenogears.
Yay!
All right.
Yeah. We are still in the second half of that list, so hold your tongue.
All right.
Dragon Quest 4, was there. Sorry. Xenogears.
Yep.
Final Fantasy 10.
Okay.
My personal baby, Xenoblade Chronicles.
Yay!
Okay.
Final Fantasy 15.
No.
It's fine.
Only one other Final Fantasy, I'm sure you know which one, beat Final Fantasy 15. I think that just shows a recency effect, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These
Between-
lists are.
oh, yeah, a lot of this seems to be going between like a lot of recent stuff and popular stuff. So I'm happy like stuff like Xenoblade and Xenogears still kind of made it, or even like some of the Dragon Questers or Earthbound. But I don't know, Final Fantasy 15 amongst the best.
Mm-mm.
It was pretty.
Sorry. Yeah,
I love
graphics are the only thing it has well, and music to a certain extent, but
Sort of.
graphics really are the only thing that game has going for it.
All right, so coming up above Final Fantasy 15 is Persona 3. Interesting.
I would agree that that's better. Yeah.
We put
I don't
yeah.
think it's
Persona-
better than 4 though.
Yeah, do we put that above 4? I really.
You
Coming-
can't control your party members.
Yeah, if it was P3 Portable,
Yeah.
I know it feels like I'm splitting hairs, but P3 Portable is. I really do like that dark aesthetic of Persona 3, but I also love the Scooby and the Gang aspect of Persona 4. But like Persona 3, that's a tough game to go back to right now after P3P and Persona 5. Just in terms of like basic functionality, that feels a little strange.
Yeah, I'm not. This one actually kind of weirds me out a little bit. I'm really surprised this one ranked as high as it did. Nier.
The original.
What?
Yeah, the original.
Yeah.
I mean, the original Nier.
It is very, very original, and Yoko Taro is the master of flawed masterpieces,
Yeah,
for sure.
there's an absolutely amazing story and characters and soundtrack in the original Nier, but gameplay wise, like I could not rate it that highly.
Oof. I just switched to easy when I just kind of got fed up. I was just like, whatever, let's
Yeah.
just blow through this popsicle stand.
It's a
Yeah.
monologue.
Here's a question as you're going through this. Do they say Zelda's an RPG?
No.
Okay, all right.
But
Just throwing that out there.
according to the the Switch Virtual Console, Zelda Breath of the Wild is indeed an RPG. Because it is categorized as such, and it should be. I feel it. Why not? I know that's
especially
always one
Breath.
we like to make fun of, though.
Wait,
All right, so
Switch Virtual Console? Did they self-release that?
Oh no, just what she means is the Switch Online store.
sorry, yeah,
Oh,
the
okay,
online
okay.
store. Sorry,
I was like,
I'm horrible with words today.
damn.
Okay, so above Nier is, and good for it, Suikoden 2.
Yes.
Yay,
I
that
still
one
need to
deserves it.
Should I play Suikoden 1? I fired it up one time
No.
on my Vita.
Eh,
No,
I mean, it's good, but knowing you, just play 2. It's fine.
just play 2.
Yeah,
Two-
2 is
two-
an absolute work of art. Yeah, that thing is a great
Yeah.
game. Okay, so above Suikoden 2 is Dragon Quest 5. Yay!
Yeah,
How
that's
far into the list are we? Where are we? Like
We're
top
at top 5 now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Dragon Quest 5 is really, really good. I'm glad.
I really gotta play it. Yeah.
I'm glad Solosi made me play that. Play the DS version because it is not that long. It's
you own
very
it?
dope. Yeah.
Can I borrow it?
Mm,
I'll throw in Canadian bacon when I send it back.
Okay, that's pretty good. But now there's just going to be greasy Canadian bacon all over.
It'll smell so good when it's heated up inside of the DS slot.
It's
Ah.
God. All right, moving on.
All right, so above Dragon Quest V is Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
That's in 4th. Wow. Or sorry, 5th.
Did we already pass 6?
6 was Dragon Quest V. I don't.
No, I mean-
there's no
no, I
numbering
mean-
here, so I'm just kind of going with it.
Six is further down. It's closer to the end.
Final Fantasy 6 is further.
Yeah, Final
Yeah.
Fantasy VI was quite a ways down. Actually,
seven-
it did beat
seven-
9 and 8.
7 is beloved in Japan, and I love 7 because it's so bat crap bonkers. It's basically Evangelion, the video game, in a lot of
I
ways.
love it. Yeah, it's one of the
Probably
games
even
that's-
more. It's
to me, Final
so
Fantasy
crazy.
VII is like Shakespeare, where it's like, even though everybody loves it, I think it deserves it. It's like, sure. You know, it's as good as everybody says it is.
It's still fun to play, too, because those battles are really fast. So,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, so above Final Fantasy VII, Nier Automata.
What?
Nier Automata is fantastic, but again,
Yeah, but like, I
It's
think
really,
it's a little-
really good, but
it's a
again,
little
I'm blaming
This is of
early.
all time, not like
Yeah.
of the last
Yeah.
5, 10, 20 years. This is all time.
If I don't hear a Chrono Trigger in a couple seconds, I'm going to get angry.
Chrono Trigger's next.
Okay, all
There
right.
you go.
And again, that's not me attacking Nier. I'm just saying, like, that's why I hate lists in general.
know.
Is because, like,
So again, this is a Famitsu list, which, you know, somehow thought Nintendogs was like one of the best games of all time, I guess. So your mileage may
I
vary.
mean, it was interesting for a minute when it came out, but yeah,
Nintendogs?
not one of
Oh,
those-
it's cute as heck. Yeah,
it's
I
cute.
love
It's just not one of those.
Nintendogs. I just wouldn't give it a 40 out of 40.
No.
Didn't they give Final Fantasy 12 a 40 out of 40 though when it first came out? I think they did.
Yeah. Oh shoot. Yeah.
Maybe
didn't
they were onto something.
Caitlin's like, Steinman.
Are you laughing with or at?
I wasn't knocking it, I promise. Put the knife down.
Okay, yeah. So Near Automata and then Chrono Trigger. Much deserved. It's great.
Oh yeah,
We
that's
know it
number
is.
one. Chrono Trigger.
No,
So
we got two more.
no, we got
Oh.
two more. So these ones are interesting. Dragon Quest 3 is number 2.
I've never actually played that Dragon Quest. So
I haven't either, but I've heard really good things.
I think that has a job
That one's
system.
probably influential and important in terms of what it did, as far as like probably broke sales records at the time, introduced a lot of people in Japan to Dragon Quest, didn't it pioneer the job system for Dragon Quest?
Yeah, is it like kind of like the Tetris of RPGs, where it was just kind of like there early and first and did it well? And
I think that's the one that like exploded, like in terms of popularity. Like that's when you had like, you know, the whole myth stories about like, oh, the game can only be released on weekends, even though like, no, the Japanese government did not actually sanction that. But like, I think that's the one that like officially blew up.
Mhm. All right, and Famitsu's number 1 game, as polled by about 2,300 people. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Valkyria Revolution.
I'm trying
No.
to guess it beforehand.
Oh, man, no.
It's Persona
Okay.
5.
Oh, you said that earlier. Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah, no.
I mean, Persona 5 is also, once again, a really
It's
good game,
really,
but-
really good. I think if the dungeons were slightly more Zelda-esque, like they give you a bit more to do and it's a little less X-button-y, I totally would agree. And if this
My
final...
complaints
the
are not
finale-
gameplay wise, but yeah.
Yeah, if the
I-
finale didn't really fall apart, I would have been a bit happier.
I just like, I love Persona 5. I'm not trying to knock it, but
They botched Summer, too. How they wasted Hawaii is an absolute affront.
this just smacks to me of this game is recent and we love it, and because it's recent and we love it, we're going to say it's the best of all time. I feel like if they were to run the same poll in another, gosh, even maybe just another year or two, let alone like another
It
5
would
years.
sell down, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it
still
would
fun
still
to
probably
talk
be
about.
on there, but I don't think it would be anywhere as close to the top as it is.
Mhm.
I like Persona 5, and it does
Yeah.
several things better than P4, but I think ultimately I still kind of just have a bigger place in my heart for P4.
Which is interesting. You're not the first person to say that. You're not even like probably the first 1,000th whatever to say that. So I just think it's interesting that they really pull it off with P4. And despite all the kind of flash and flare of PlayStation 5, Persona 5, it just didn't quite meet. Everything about it is really, really good. It just did not hit. I don't know. With the development time, I think you were expecting a bit more.
Yeah, for me, the places where Persona 5 fell short were in terms of localization, writing, and some of the characterizations I thought were kind of...
What's some of the beef with the
which we talked
localization?
about
Because again,
already.
that's not something I've heard once
man,
before
that-
either.
Oh, yeah. We did a whole episode on it pretty much, but yeah, it's...
There's
I'll
a
have
really-
to check it out.
There's a really good site that I think Derek can direct you to,
Mhm.
because I can't remember which one, but there's a really good site that rises above all the cacophony. It's done by a really excellent localization expert, and he actually like shows you what is wrong with each one of the statements. A lot of that stuff was really hard for a layman like me to read and understand, but this dude's website, the real flashy one, the one I'm talking about, Derek?
Oh, I think I've even seen it. Yeah.
It's personaproblems.com.
Yeah, that one did a really good job of explaining to me, somebody who doesn't really think about the English language that much. That did a really good job of explaining it to me. I have to make a decision between whether, now that I finished up XCOM, do I go to Persona 5 and finish that up, or do I just bite the bullet?
Oh,
and
you're not
go
beating it?
I still haven't beaten it. I only got to like the 3rd dungeon and I got distracted.
What?
I know. I was loving what I was playing, but it was getting close to the end of the school year. I was super busy.
After
And-
everything? Wow, I can't believe you didn't even beat it. Okay.
Wait, I just
know.
got distracted with PersonaProblems.com. What game?
Persona
I still
5.
haven't beaten Persona 5. And again, I didn't hate anything about Persona 5, but I found myself like when I was coming home at the end of the day and I was super tired, like I was getting
The
ready.
monotony of going to school and doing social things, in a video game just kind of compounded on me in real life.
It started to get
Next
to me. It started to get to me a little bit, and I didn't have a long like stretch of time to play it. So
Yeah.
I'm now debating: do I go back to Persona 5, or do I join in with the Final Fantasy 12 craze and go pick that up right now?
They're both good. I can see, Rob, you struggling towards the end of Persona 5. Like I think the
100 floor dungeon,
the third from last dungeon or whatever, you're gonna have problems with because it just goes on too long, and you're gonna be like, why is this still happening to me?
Yeah.
But I do think it's a great game overall. I'm still happy with it. So
I feel like the 100 hours is it's funny, whenever I bring up Dragon Quest, people always go like, aren't those games like 100 hours long? And I'm like, actually, Dragon Quest 7 is the only one that is egregiously long. Like Dragon Quest 5 only took me like 30 hours to beat. Like that, and that was perfectly fine. Dragon Quest 8 with speeding up the battles only took me 30 hours. Like the Dragon Quest games, 7 is the stupid long one. The rest of them are actually very beatable.
Yeah, and for some reason that reputation kind of bled into the rest of the series.
Yeah, like I don't understand.
I mean, they're not short, but yeah.
No. But I think 30, 40 hours is like the perfect length
fine.
of time for an RPG. My campaign in XCOM 2 was just under 30 hours. And that was perfect because I was starting to get a little bored by it. And hearing that I'm like at hour 20 in Persona 5, I'm like, oh.
I mean, just try to play it, focus on enjoying it, and then like if you don't enjoy it anymore, then that's one thing. But
I still need to play
worrying too much about time before the fact is hard.
I still need to play Nier.
Man, you're all over the
Give me
place.
Dragon Quest, I'll give you Nier.
But I'll just buy Nier. Like I'll just buy the damn thing.
You're gonna hate the second playthrough. It's exactly the same as the first with a few extra cutscenes, and then the third one is totally different and absolutely 100% worth playing.
So I just have to grit my teeth and get through it.
Yep.
Oh boy. And the only other thing I have here, I got some news story on my desk right now. This is Kingdom Hearts 3 in 2018. Yeah, okay, whatever.
Similar to Steven's screen.
2018 days.
They at D23, the Disney convention thingy, they announced Kingdom Hearts 3 is apparently coming out in 2018. They showed off a Toy Story World, which looked really, really cool. I gotta say that looked...
Have you seen like the graphical comparisons to the first Toy Story movie?
It actually looks better. It looks really good.
To be fair, the lighting is still better in, of course, CG film, but yeah, everything else looks better.
I just wonder, like, with the engine change and with Nomura running his mouth off about Kingdom Hearts 3, I'd say late 2018 at the earliest. Like, I do not think that thing comes out.
Apparently they said it's going to have less worlds than Kingdom Hearts 2 did.
I think that's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. But here's the thing.
If it had less awesome worlds, then I'd be into that. Because, yeah, definitely for something like that, less is totally more. And should be more.
I'm totally on board with that game, and hearing Donald and Goofy speak Japanese, I was getting totally excited. And then somebody showed up wearing a black cloak and zippers, and I was like, nope, I don't care. I don't care. Like, and that really sucks because I love the Disney aspect of Kingdom Hearts, but that story is incomprehensible nonsense right now. Like, how am I supposed to jump back into this? The last game I played was
trying to wrap it up, though.
There's like 13 versions of Xehanort, and like I don't know. There's like 8 different versions of Sora and Venta.
And now Leonard Nimoy's passed away, so you can't. And Christopher Lee, like, so what is the goddamn point right now? I just wish that it had none of the Organization 13 stuff. Like, I don't need all that stuff. I love the original Kingdom Hearts 1 story. I thought that was just enough zany anime-ness in the middle of all the Disney to work. And
Billy zaniness.
Yes, all the Billy zany. Have you ever seen Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight?
No, that's right. He was in that.
He is so over the top insane in that movie that it wraps it's like he's impersonating Nick Cage the entire way through the movie, and it's awesome. You need to watch it.
B.E.'s Nick Cage, or
yeah, he's like all over the map. He's super campy in it. It's worth watching. I would recommend that. But like Kingdom Hearts 1 had just the right amount of crazy anime stuff, and then I don't even want to say they doubled down. It's like they squared it and then cubed it in Kingdom Hearts 2. And I just have, and for those non-math people, that would be taking it to the 6th power. I just have, I don't know. It looks cool. You think there's going to be a Star Wars world?
That, you know what? Instead of Sephiroth,
I
you
really
fight
hope not.
like Darth Vader instead.
I really, really hope not. That's just going to feel way too much like, oh, tie-in, because, yeah, that's right. We have The Last Jedi coming out around the same time.
If you don't think he's going to be hanging out with Groot at some point in Kingdom Hearts 3, I got news for you. That writes itself right there. Baby Groot, voiced by Vin Diesel, and in every language, all he has to do is say Groot. This works. But yeah, I would say late 2018. Anybody want to take me up on that bet?
Yeah, I mean, they said
I wouldn't be
2018,
surprised if it gets delayed.
I wouldn't either.
No, have you seen that picture from one of the early Persona 5 trailers? It says like winter 2014.
Right?
Whoopsies.
Oops. All right. Well, that does it for this episode of Random Encounter. Apparently, everybody needs to go out and buy Final Fantasy XII: The Zodiac Age.
Yes.
Good job, Square Enix.
Please do it.
Can they fix Final Fantasy 13? The answer is no.
Oh my god, can you believe how long they spent on that series? Like, we just finished 15 and 12 was done 10 years ago.
Oh, that hurts. I still love that original piece of Final Fantasy 12 art, like the first art that they ever showed for the game, like that cityscape with
Yeah.
They redid it.
That game had great concept art.
Well, they
The
didn't
dude-
redo it, but the artist for Zodiac Age drew his own interpretation of that scene, and it has like the actual characters in it this time, Fran and Balthier.
Oh, can you show? Can you?
I still
link
like
that to me? I want to see
the
that.
Sky City
Yeah, I'll find
one.
it for you.
They have like the one of them kind of hitting up like an airport.
I love that piece of
airship
art.
area.
That's been
Yeah.
my wallpaper for so many years.
The
Oh,
dude.
I totally get that poster.
Are we talking about the same piece of art that has like the guy walking on the streets and he's got like a white robe on or something like that? That Final Fantasy 12, I was so excited for that when they first announced it, and I'm really glad that game's getting the love that it kind of deserves. I shouldn't even say kind of. It really does deserve it, and I would like to see that expanded on. Show me that picture. I
I
want to
was
see
so
that picture.
excited seeing Ashley's massive thighs and a tiny pink skirt. I
Oh,
was like,
that's
hey,
really good.
a big thighed girl. I dig it.
You can actually, you can see all of the characters are there. Vaughn and Pinello are sort of to the left of Balthier, and then much smaller off to the right, you can make out Ash and.
It's also one of my
Vosh
favorite
is
logos
somewhere in the
too.
background there.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the piece for them.
Yeah, I'll share with you guys. This is the piece of art that I always think about with Final Fantasy 12. This is a great thing to do in the middle of a podcast. And
I know, right? I was
apologize.
just about to say,
I
here we are
apologize,
talking
Sarah.
about
I'll
a thing
use
you
the
can't
picture
see.
for the graphic. How about that?
That picture just
Yeah.
encapsulates everything that I wanted about Final Fantasy
Yeah.
12.
That's
Like
the
I
one
was-
I was thinking of too. It's
Yeah.
the city of Arcades. It's got kind of like the orange sunset
Yeah.
hues on
Yeah.
the buildings and everything. It's beautiful.
and you actually do feel like that when you're on the streets in town. Like you do
Yeah.
really feel that. If they turned around and said Final Fantasy 16, we're modeling it after 12, I'd be like, hell yeah, like let's do this.
Yeah, more
I'm
Evilise, please.
Yes, please.
totally on board with. Oh man, we need to bring back Evilise.
More Ovaltine, please. Well, they are bringing back Evilise, Rob. If only you had played this game called Final
I
Fantasy 14.
know, I
Yes.
know.
We don't
Hey,
even
Rob.
actually know
Talk
specifically.
Funny
about a
thing.
time sink.
Well, we don't
We know
know,
it's
but Dalmasca is a location in Heidelin. Like the lore book mentions Dalmasca. So while I hope that Tactics gets reference to, it would seem more likely that for sure 12 is going to get a reference.
Interesting. I had heard the opposite, that Yoshida confirmed that it was more Tactics than 12.
Oh, well, okay. So maybe I'm wrong. I just,
Well,
like I said,
Dalmasca is still
Dalmasca is a
safe.
physical place. So,
Yeah.
and
All
it's
right,
well,
near,
they're both-
it's
and he's
near
playing coy.
Doma. They're
I'm
both
gonna-
in the same continent. So,
I'm gonna try to end the podcast again because it didn't
Okay.
work the first time. All right, so thank
Wait.
you everybody for listening to Random Encounter. For Derek, Caitlin, and Steph, we will see you all later.
Bye.
Go play FF12.
Yep.
love it.
Don't believe what's his face's lies.
Andor.
So, wait a second.
Andor.
Where was the original end supposed to be? I missed that.
I tried and failed miserably. No,
It's
we're
okay.
ending it right now.